They didn't even give her a chance to clear her desk. One minute she was leading meetings, pitching ideas, and building the brand she believed in. And the next, she was being escorted out with nothing but a cardboard box and 1,000 questions. No warning, no explanation, just a cold, "We're letting you go." It hit her like a truck. 8 years of loyalty, late nights, and missed birthdays, all wiped out in a single heartless decision. Her name is Maya. To her old company, she was just another name on the payroll. But to the people who worked under her, she was a leader, a mentor, someone who actually cared. The firing didn't just sting, it lit a fire. At first, she spiraled. Doubt, anger, fear, she questioned everything. But the thing about being knocked down is, it forces you to look up. And when Maya did, she saw something she hadn't before, a gap in the market, a way to do things better, fairer. She took every lesson she'd learned, the wins, the failures, even the moments she was overlooked, and used them as fuel. What started as a one-woman hustle in her small apartment slowly turned into something real, something powerful. And just a few years later, Maya wasn't looking for jobs anymore. She was creating them. But here's the twist: the company that fired her, it didn't just notice her comeback, it started to feel it. Because Maya's new business, it wasn't just successful, it was their competition, and customers were starting to leave in droves. What happened next not only shook her old bosses, it made headlines. But before we get there, let's go back to where it all began, the moment she realized she had nothing left to lose. Maya sat on the edge of her bed that night, still in the same clothes she was fired in. Her phone buzzed with messages, most of them shocked, some supportive, and a few just plain curious. She didn't respond to any. The silence in her apartment felt louder than usual. The same company where she'd poured years of her life had tossed her aside like she didn't matter. And the worst part, no one really told her why. Just vague words about restructuring and new direction. But Maya knew the truth ran deeper. She started replaying everything in her head: recent meetings, closed-door conversations, that new executive who never looked her in the eye. The more she thought about it, the more it felt personal, like someone had been planning this. But why? She was one of their top performers, had just helped close their biggest deal last quarter. None of it added up, and that's when a different kind of fire started to grow, not the kind fueled by bitterness, but by clarity. Maya had always seen cracks in the system, how decisions were made behind closed doors, how younger talent was often silenced, how customers were treated more like numbers than people. She had ideas, real ones, but they were always too bold, or not the right time. Now, without a jolt to hold her back, she began scribbling those same ideas down. It started with a notebook and a question: what if I built something better? But as Maya mapped out her vision, she didn't realize just how much resistance she'd face. Not just from the market, but from the very people who once called her a colleague, because in their eyes, she wasn't supposed to rise again, and if she did, she certainly wasn't supposed to outshine them. Word of Maya's startup began to spread quietly at first. An ex-colleague here, a curious client there. She had no office, no investors, just a laptop and a fierce determination to prove they were wrong about her. But something about the way she operated started to catch attention. She listened. She built products based on real feedback. She didn't cut corners to chase numbers. She built trust. Slowly, her company started gaining traction, and with every small win, she felt a little piece of herself come back. But behind the scenes, things were far from smooth. She faced roadblocks at every turn. Former co-workers, still loyal to the company that fired her, started shutting doors she hadn't even knocked on yet. A few potential clients mysteriously pulled out after thinking things over. Maya suspected where the pressure was coming from, but had no proof. The industry was smaller than it seemed. Whispers traveled fast, and someone at her old company clearly wanted her out of the picture for good. At the same time, an unexpected subplot began to unfold. Rachel, One of Maya's former interns reached out. She'd just quit after seeing what Maya had built. "They're scared," she said over coffee, eyes scanning a room like they might be watched. "Your name comes up in meetings. They're trying to figure out how to stop you." That was the moment Maya realized this wasn't just business anymore. It was personal. Maya tried to stay focused, but pressure was building. Bills were stacking up. She was doing the work of 5 people. And as the competition started noticing her more, so did their legal team. One wrong move, and everything she'd built could come crashing down. But she wasn't backing off, not now. Not when they were finally starting to feel her presence. Maya barely slept. Her startup was gaining serious momentum, but so was the pressure. Every day brought new emails, new challenges, and new reasons to doubt. But even in the chaos, something was shifting. Clients from her old company were quietly reaching out, asking questions, booking meetings. They didn't say it directly, but she could tell they were curious. They wanted out. They wanted something better. She moved into a tiny co-working space, hired her first 2 employees, and poured every dollar she had into building something real. Meanwhile, the whispers became louder. A friend in PR tipped her off. Her former company was planning a campaign to discredit her business. They were calling clients behind her back, warning them, questioning her credentials, spinning stories. One client forwarded her a message from their executive team: "Proceed with caution. She's unstable and unreliable." Maya stared at the email for a long time, her hands shaking. It wasn't just competition now. It was war. But the more they tried to drag her down, the stronger her resolve grew. Her story was starting to reach people. Other professionals, especially women, saw what she was doing and felt inspired. Some reached out with job applications. Others shared their own experiences of being silenced, pushed aside, or underestimated. Maya wasn't just building a company anymore. She was building a movement. Then came the moment everything shifted. A major investor, one who had ties to both Maya's startup and her old company, requested a meeting. No agenda, just coffee. But Maya had a feeling this wasn't casual. Rumors swirled that her former bosses were getting desperate, and this investor might be the bridge or the bomb. As she walked into that meeting, all eyes were suddenly on her. Everything she'd built was hanging by a thread. The investor, a man named David Chen, was calm, polite, too polite. He smiled as Maya sat across from him, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. He asked about her journey, her vision, her goals for the next year. She answered every question, guarded but confident. Then he leaned in slightly, lowered his voice, and said something that made her stomach drop. "They offered me a seat on their board if I walk away from you." For a second, Maya couldn't breathe. She wasn't just losing deals now, she was being boxed in from all sides. David had been her biggest prospect. His name alone could open doors. But now he was standing at a crossroads, and clearly he wasn't here just for coffee. He was here to test her, or warn her, maybe both. "They're scared of you, Maya," he continued. "They see what you're building. But they also know you're vulnerable right now. One wrong move, one lawsuit, one scandal, and they win." He paused, as if weighing his next words. "They're not just trying to slow you down. They want to erase you." That line hit hard. This wasn't just about business growth or startup struggles anymore. It was about survival. Her old company was using every connection, every loophole, every ounce of influence to crush her quietly. And now, someone she thought was on her side was holding a choice that could change everything. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed on the table. A notification from her lawyer. Subject line: "Cease and desist. Urgent." She didn't open it right away. She just stared at the screen, then at David, then back at the door. Every path forward suddenly felt like a trap. But Maya had come too far to fold now. Maya opened the email with steady hands. The cease and desist accused her of unfair competition and misuse of intellectual property, claims she knew were baseless. Still, They had resources, lawyers, and the power to drag her through endless courtrooms. For a second, she thought about walking away, but only for a second. She looked at David. "If you're looking for someone to play it safe, I'm not her," she said. "But if you believe in building something real, now's the time." He didn't speak right away. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table. "You didn't hear this from me," he said. Inside were internal documents, emails, memos, proof that her old company had been targeting her from the start. Blacklists, coordinated client interference, even payments to spread false reviews. Maya's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. This wasn't just corporate strategy, it was sabotage. With that evidence, everything changed. Her lawyer moved fast. The cease and desist was dropped. A formal investigation into her former employer began. News outlets caught wind of the story. Asterisk fired woman turns CEO, exposes corporate dirty play. Asterisk clients flooded in. Support poured out. What once felt like a one-woman battle had become a movement. But just as Maya finally breathed, the final twist came. One of her earliest hires, someone she'd mentored and trusted, quietly left the company. Days later, she showed up in a press release. Her old company had hired her as their new innovation lead, a betrayal Maya never saw coming. Still, as she stood in her now buzzing office, Maya knew one thing for sure. They could copy her hires, her ideas, even her moves. But they'd never match her reason for building. This fight had made her unstoppable. Maya didn't react publicly to the betrayal. She didn't post a statement or try to defend herself. She'd learned by now that success speaks louder than anything else. And the truth, her company was thriving. New clients were signing on weekly. Investors were now chasing her. And the office that once echoed with uncertainty was now filled with voices, energy, and purpose. She started focusing less on proving them wrong and more on building something right. Her story had gone viral, but she stayed grounded, showing up every day not just as a founder, but as a leader people believed in. Rachel, the intern who had first warned her, became one of her top executives. The team that had grown with her from day one. They became the foundation of a company that was now setting the standard others were trying to follow. As for the company that fired her, they stumbled. The media coverage, the investigation, and the backlash from former employees took a toll. They tried to rebrand, release statements, but the damage was already done. Clients don't forget how people are treated, and talent, they follow the ones who inspire them. Maya's journey wasn't perfect. She'd faced betrayal, burnout, and battles she never saw coming. But she never lost the one thing they couldn't take from her, her vision. She built a company rooted in values, real leadership, and resilience. Looking back, the firing wasn't the end of her story. It was the spark that lit everything. What they thought would break her only set her free. And now, the woman they once pushed out, she stands at the top, not just as a competitor, but as a symbol of what happens when you bet on yourself and never back down.